Welcome to the Hard Water Fishing Show. Jeff and Jason talk tactics, gear, and ice fishing legends.
Welcome back to the Hard Water Fishing Show. It is Season 5, Episode 4 already, Jeff. It is the 4th week in November. We're heading into turkey time, one of my favorite holidays, where you just eat and eat some more, and then you get leftovers, and it's just phenomenal. We have a great show. We have a great show for you tonight. We interviewed Colby, who is an ice fishing guide and a fly fishing guide out in New Hampshire and Vermont. So we'll talk to him later on in the show tonight. He sure had some great stuff and great tips. So looking forward to sharing that with everybody. Jeff, what are you drinking tonight, buddy?
Yeah, so I have New Glarus again. Remember we had this discussion about this beer company that can only buy in Wisconsin?
Yeah, I still think that is suspect, but go on.
So the Vikings did beat the Packers today, so that was good. But I'm still going to drink a Wisconsin beer. So this is
made
called
with Packer tears.
Made with Packer tears, Aaron Rodgers tears. Oh my gosh. Dancing Man Wheat.
Good Lord.
And so this has a story, of course. If you dream of wheat, this brew will get your toes tapping. Since 1995, we have brewed Bavarian-style wheat beers exclusively for the same great taste that grows and malts our own Wisconsin wheat. In a world full of posers, this is a true Hefeweizen, naturally 100% bottle fermented and hazy. Expect this beer to cascade effervescence into your glass. The rich, spicy clove and cinnamon notes will greet your nose while sweet fruit and wheat kiss your lips. Lick the foam from your mouth and admit sometimes that you just gotta get up and dance.
What? You couldn't see my face while you're reading this because you're into it. There's words there I don't even know. And then there's other words that are highly concerning. And you dream of wheat and dance, buddy.
And the problem is, like, if you could see the lettering, this is what I'm reading. Like, men of a certain age have a trouble typing.
Hang on,
this
let me
light
get my
on
readers.
A bottle. Yeah, I felt like it. So anyways, I'm going to open this thing now. Whew, pretty good.
All right. So I'm still on my old man beers, I think, unless I'm corrected. But this beer does not go into extraneous speaking to try to lull you into a sense of love for itself. It simply says, it's got 2 words to describe itself, Jeff. America's beer. Old Milwaukee.
Oh, look at that can. It's like,
yeah, it's camo. It's a camo
something.
can. Yeah,
nice.
It's, that time of year. It's orange and it's got a little bullseye on it. So if you put it up on a fence post,
can shoot at it.
Shoot
Interesting.
At it. Just with a safe background, of course.
Yeah, of course. That sounds good.
Yeah, it's just like I remember it.
I can't say that. I've never had this before. It's actually okay. And I'm not usually a big wheat beer person. That's why this has been in my fridge for a while. But anyways. All right. So after we got through that story, patrons, not Patron, thanks everybody for your support. We really appreciate it. The continued support. Helping us pay for hosting our sites and doing that kind of stuff. It's awesome. So
it is.
Thank
you very much.
Show business. We have a few people using our Amazon affiliate link, which is kind of nice. So another way to support the show. Doesn't really cost anything. So if you click on the links that go to Amazon from our podcast page, you can help support the show that way. Gear. We do have a gear update. So the store that we had opened with some special merchandise like a hat and a t-shirt and sweatshirt has closed. So we are, again, back on a Redbubble site, so you can still order merch. It's just those specific items were only for the store for a very short time.
Correct.
We actually had somebody buy something today, so that's always there. And there's like T-shirts and hats. There's a baseball cap there. There's some other stuff there.
Should we talk about the thing we're considering and just get some people want to give us some feedback? Like they can email us or send us a message or...
Yeah.
So we are thinking about hosting a virtual ice fishing tournament this year through Fish Donkey, right? And we're not 100% certain yet. So we're soliciting some feedback on that topic if people be interested in participating. And we're not... This isn't going to be a money thing. I think we'll probably have a low entry fee just to cover cost. But mainly, we'll put up a hat or a sweatshirt or something as a prize. But mainly bragging rights. Have the winner on the show to interview. We can definitely do that.
Ooh,
right?
that sounds
so if
like
you want
one
to be
that
on
we
the
can
show,
give away
this
for
will be
really
your time.
easy.
So let us know. And the cool thing about the Fish Donkey app is we can open that up worldwide. As long as you have the fish board and the app with Fish Donkey, it can be anywhere. So we're going to work on that. If you think it's a good idea, just send us a thumbs up. Let us know. If you think it's the dumbest thing you've ever heard, we'll probably do it anyway. But
Jason and I will be like, there's one person and they went and got to be on the show.
Nothing would make me, if it's just me and Jeff, and then Jeff has to interview me as the winner, that would make it all worthwhile.
Oh,
yeah,
that would hurt, Jay. That would kill me. Yeah. All right. Yeah, so that's in the works. Best place to interact with us is on social media, Instagram and Facebook. You can email us at hardwatershow.com. Or you can find our website at hardwatershow.com. You can find our YouTube page, where I just put the last episode up today. Jay, you been there yet?
No. Dang it. I know. I was going to do better.
Well. Yeah, well. And you can email us at hardwatershow@gmail.com. So that's how you get a hold of us. And, Jay, no fact checks this week. We didn't screw it up.
I wonder if Dave's been too busy to listen to the show.
We'll see. We'll see if our fact checkers, if we screwed something up or said something wrong. I
appreciate that. I mean, because otherwise, how would we ever know? We'd just move forward with our ignorance, which is kind of what I do every day in my life.
All right. Listener news and current events. So this is something I'm kind of a YouTube junkie. I just am. I like to watch cars and fishing on YouTube, and I wouldn't say it's endless, but there's a lot of good content out there, so it's easy to get sucked in and watch it a lot. I mean, I have the YouTube Premium, so I don't have to watch the commercials because that's just, I can't deal with that.
I actually thought about putting that like on my Christmas list this year, just because I do actually go to YouTube on usually when something breaks, which happens a lot, to figure out how to fix it.
So there's this guy on there, Jay Siemens is his name. He actually, I don't know how exactly he has a YouTube channel that's pretty popular. He also has a product called Catch and Cook, which I had this summer. It's like kind of like a shore lunch, but a different shore lunch, if you want to say that, like maybe a better shore lunch. I don't know. I had it this summer actually with some walleye, Lake of the Woods walleye, and it was really, really good. But he also has this YouTube channel, and he has some of the coolest trips, Jay. I mean, like, so the first one, and now there's a couple links that we'll throw in the show notes, but he had a friend, of course, that did fly-in ice fishing. So, like, they would fly into a lake that you couldn't get to in any other way.
Holy cow.
And he put his gear in the plane. Yeah. It took him two trips. Because, those little planes, you can't put a ton in it. So, 2 trips, but his buddy flew him out to this lake, and he just fished it.
Most of those planes, you'd have to quarter me up to get me in and out on a lake.
But it was cool. Like, they were catching trout on this lake in the north, Manitoba, and it was super cool.
You should put, you're on his YouTube, Jeff? You should put a comment on what, have you looked to see if he interacts in his comments?
He does.
Then you should put a link to our show in there and say, hey, we'd like to have you as a guest, and see if he'll get to you.
So, and he had this other cool video, and I know this is just kind of current events, but so he's been fishing this year. They drove north until they found ice.
Tell me about this.
And so they went to Lynn Lake in Manitoba. I mean, they just pointed their pickup truck north, and like drove and slept in it and drove and
Why don't
slept
we
in it
do
until they
stuff
found
like
ice.
that? Oh yeah, we got jobs and wives.
Yes. But I mean, they were not on a ton of ice. I mean, it was walkable solid ice, but no more than that. And they were sight fishing trout, and they had awesome video. I mean, trout. It's just the trout episode today. I think, because we're going to talk about. They're such pretty fish.
They are.
They
and they're
really
tasty.
Are. Yep. All right, so that was my first kind of current events. That's just Jeff started watching ice fishing videos. I'm starting to get really antsy.
Me too.
You know, ice fishing shows, ice fishing videos. I organized my tackle today. Like, I took everything out. I took a picture and put it out there.
I saw pictures of
all
your
my
junk.
stuff. Yeah, so I cleaned it all out.
I think you got a couple of my lures. I was kind of looking at some of that going, I think some of that stuff's mine.
Yeah, I know. All right. We also did get an email from Cody L. And Jason, this is right up your alley. Did you see this email?
No.
So Cody L. sent this email. He converted a ice shack, a cargo trailer into a kind of a wheelhouse, right? Like, it's not exactly a wheelhouse, but so he lives in Wisconsin, and they don't get a ton of ice, so they don't want like an ice castle kind of thing. It was too big, so they took a small utility trailer, put some holes in the bottom, and it looks really, really nice. So he sent us some pictures. It was a 6x12 enclosed trailer. He insulated the walls, floor, and ceiling. Put some paneling, wainscoting. He used a torch to burn grain in the pine trim.
Wow, fancy.
Vinyl floor, catch cover conversion kit. And he sent us this awesome picture of 6 guys out there on the ice, hanging out, fishing out of this thing.
Very cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. So you had talked about this for years.
I did.
Because
I eventually sold the trailer.
Yeah, this looks pretty nice, and I think this is what you would have wanted it to be.
I've always struggled with it because it's I start off with like a 6-hour drive almost, other than Clear Lake, to put it on the ice.
Well, these guys were in Wisconsin. They sounded like they had not a ton of ice, but I mean enough to support this. It looked so awesome. So I asked them to put some pictures out there. We'll put some pictures out there soon enough here, but. Thank you, Cody, for sending those in and sharing those. And, I still think it's an awesome trailer, but I like seeing the picture of the guys out in front, having a weekend, getting out there.
That's what it's all about.
That's what it's about.
Making memories.
Yep. I did see on Rogers on Red, which, I don't know, they just seem to post. The Red Lake is usually the first destination lake that kind of locks up, and Rogers on Red is a resort there, and they showed pictures of ice, and then it was really windy, so now it kind of broke up. But their prediction is the first week of December.
That's almost a full month behind last year.
Yeah, so of course, weather is weather. I don't know if that'll actually be that day, but that's what their prediction was. I don't make predictions. I'm guessing it's going to be a while. It's not been that cold. I mean, there's ice around, but nothing that you can fish yet.
It'll happen. It'll happen.
Yep. I have seen some people way up north reporting that they were fishing like way up north. But
they're on those frog ponds. What was it last year? Early ice for a skinny frog?
Early ice for a skinny frog, yes. I am not a skinny frog.
I'm on full feed. I am not a skinny frog.
Gear. So Jay, you had something you wanted to talk about in gear.
Yeah, I'll actually put some pictures of this on ours because the link I found it on you couldn't share. It's from a ice fishing group called Iceholics or something like that, and it's a question we see a lot is how do you load once you get a portable shack, a flip over shack, and you fill it with all your stuff. I mean, these things are heavy, and so we see questions about like how do you load them. And people have all sorts of things. And this guy, I thought it was a really cheap, kind of innovative way to do it, is he took an aluminum ladder, so your aluminum extension ladders, and you can find these 16-footers around. Some part of it will get bent, or you find them in a garage sale for $20. So he cut that down. He put bolted a couple of brackets on the end so it sits on his tailgate. And then he'd used all thread, ready rod or all thread, depends on what you call it, and made a series of PVC pipe rollers. So you take a PVC pipe, put a cap on it, drill a hole, put the ready rod through it so it creates a roller. And then he used that to push his ice shack up into his truck. I imagine it comes down a lot faster. But so you can probably watch out. Yes. But the beauty of that is that ladder's super light. So you made it, and it's not going to rust. So if it gets wet, it's not going to leave a rust mark on your thing. It's not going to get waterlogged. I just thought it was another. I see these aluminum ladders used a lot. I follow some boat building, tiny boat, older boat restoration projects. I think people use these ladders a lot for framing because they're light and they're cheap, and you can't buy all that aluminum and put it together. So it was cool. It was a good idea. Cool. I'll throw some pictures up to help load an ice shack.
Even a 2-man ice shack, you get your propane tank, you get if you do a 20-pounder, I don't do those, but a lot of people do. You get your heater, your Vexilar, your flasher, your fishing gear. I mean, those things they can be 400 or 500 pounds if you're not careful.
So to me, then the thing you create this little ladder thing, and then give everybody just another idea, I guess. My brother's brother-in-law put one of these in his pickup for unloading and unloading a smoker at smoking contests. He's got a big cabinet smoker. It's super heavy, and he just took he took a winch from Harbor Freight, mounted it in the front of the pickup. So same thing you could do with the ice shack with that ladder roller rack is you take that winch, you mount the winch in the front of the pickup, you hook it up to the ice shack, it pulls it right up that nice ramp, and then unloading you do the same thing, you back it down so it doesn't take your feet out from underneath you and head down the parking lot. So you can do the same, so that little $100 winch, $20 used ladder, and you can safely load and unload your heavy ice shack without any risk to blowing out your back or needing 3 guys to help you lift it in. I think it's sharp. It's great. It's a good idea. Do it.
I like it. I like it. I've seen those winch things too. And they're what, $100, $150?
Yeah, even less. Yeah, I mean, because you don't need anything super high powered, but the roller system to get it up there, I think. And he just had one. I don't think you'd need 2. You could do a double that would give you more stability, but I think with a winch, you just kind of keep it steady down there. I think it'd work great.
That sounds like a great tip. I need a pickup and a winch and
I sent you a picture of a good pickup for sale. That's a nice one.
I saw that.
I'm telling you should get that. Yeah. It's fast. Yeah, it's red.
Oh, it's red. I'm like, it has a 5.3, right?
Those red trucks, they're twice as fast as the blue ones.
Gear-wise, so I mentioned earlier, I took my ice fishing gear out and kind of exploded it, right? I needed to take an inventory. I needed to figure out, are there any lures I need to buy? I think I need to get some new line, those kind of things. So I kind of did that while I watched football today. I have 9 Frosty spoons of the same color.
Yeah. I was sitting here thinking of...
that might be a problem.
Here's what we should do. We should switch ice fishing gear. I'll give you all my stuff to fish with for the season, and you give me all your stuff, and then we'll switch back. Be like you have all new stuff, just in a pile. And it comes in a vintage backpack.
Yeah, I know. I've seen your backpack. I do think, though, one of our listeners, I have to look it up to see who said this. He mentioned that foam and those containers really help, and he had all of his lures really nicely in these foam containers. I think I might switch the way I put my lures into a container. I had one of those flat single story, not that I have double story, double story front and back tackle box.
I know what you're talking about, but I'm enjoying watching you struggle.
I'm trying to describe it. So it's like...
you guys, you can't see the video, but his hands are flapping.
So it's a Plano Tackle Box, and I've used these for ice fishing forever. They are small, and they fit in your pocket, like a big pocket, not like a jeans pocket, but like they fit in my bibs. So I really like them because if I'm fishing a species, if I can keep that species in that tackle box, I can put it in my pocket of my bibs, and I can be mobile that way, right? I can take my jig box, I can take my rods, and I can kind of move around and stuff. So I like that. So I want something that still fits in my pocket, but maybe something I can put foam in it so that I can stick those lures, because they get beat up. I mean, I threw lures away because they rattle around in there and then they fall apart. And so we had a good example of that. So I got to find just the right size jig box that I can put the foam in there and it still fits in my pocket. All right, so I did go to the ice fishing show, the Hardwater Expo in Blaine, Minnesota. That was this weekend.
I Googled that. It was too far away for me to get to.
It wasn't that big. It was bigger than the first one I went to. That was at the Adrenaline Center in Ramsey, but it was bigger than that. But it's not the St. Paul ice fishing show, right? It's like kind of a smaller version of that. But they had clam, and they had some of the big names there. It was a little bigger. A couple things I saw there that was interesting were Fish Daddy lures. So I actually had him on a few years ago. We had him on. I fished with him. He has the LED jigs.
Yeah.
He had a new one out that's a micro LED spoon. So basically it's like those glow spoons that we use with the little sticks.
Yep.
But instead of a little stick, it's a little LED so that you can not go through them as much. I wanted to try those out. Unfortunately, I was at the show and kind of had to leave. Something else happened and I had to leave, so I didn't get to buy any. But Andy and I, who owns Fish Daddy Lures, he said we were going to connect, and I wanted to try those out.
Cool,
so
very
I'll
cool.
be ordering a few of those. Yeah, so I want to try them out. Because it seemed like maybe if you don't have to buy as many of those little stick things, that kind of, they're kind of one and done, right? Like, I mean, the LEDs the battery does wear out, but I think it lasts quite some times. Second thing, I actually bought two of these. There's this cool, it's called Go Athletic Apparel. Basically, they're made in Minnesota. It's just somebody makes this like warm gear. So I bought a balaclava. Is it balaclava? Baklava?
I think baklava is the thing that goes over, isn't it?
Baklava, balaclava.
Pastry? Baklava?
I don't know.
I'm Googling that.
Baklava,
I think that's
balaclava. You put it over your head like a head sock, and then you put your snowmobile helmet or your ATV helmet over it, right? To keep you warm. It's like thin.
Yeah, baklava, Baklva, is a Greek dessert. I knew it was.
Not a Greek
now,
dessert.
Now, a balaclava.
Balaclava.
You could eat a baklava in your balaclava.
Oh my gosh. So I did not buy dessert. I bought
I'm hungry.
Balaclava.
My wife's cousin, her husband and her, God, they used to run a Greek restaurant. It's wonderful stuff. Anyway, just
so
digressing.
I'm not gonna put food on my head, Jay. So I always struggle with these things. They had a really nice one. It was nice and big to go over my head. And I also bought this neck gaiter, and their prices were crazy cheap. Like this balaclava, not baklava, it was $5.
Wow.
For the head sock thing. And then it was $15 for this neck gaiter. I forgot I was going to bring it in and show it to you, but it just goes around your neck to keep you warm. You know how you always seem to get air leaks around your where your hat meets your jacket?
I grow my beard down that way in the winter.
This is like a nice neck gaiter to kind of go all the way up and keep you warm. They had tons of other stuff too, but it looked cool.
Yeah, I always get it right in like where the V of your zipper comes down a little bit, right there in the center of your throat.
So it was only $15, and it's super thick, and it's like made of like dry wick material. I don't know. They had lots of cool warm weather gear. I thought it was for a very reasonable price. And we're not sponsored. We don't get anything. It's just stuff I find that I think is useful. All right. So this next one, Jason, you're gonna like, and maybe you're turning me on this now. Bass Kong. They make these shells.
Yep, I've been looking at this because I've got a Helix from summer, and I got the Ice Deucer last year. I'm piecing it together every year.
Yes.
But I need a shuttle.
So I've always been kind of like, whatever, it's just a hunk of plastic. What's the big deal? But I saw these things at the show, Jay. They are look really well built.
Okay.
And look really nice. Like I didn't use it, but like it has switches. I mean, it's 3D printed, but I don't know.
So I wonder
really
if they're
matters.
going to be at the St. Paul Ice Fishing Show, because that might take me over the edge because I've been looking at them online, and I thought I'd wait.
Yeah, I bet you they will be, but they looked really nice, like nicer than the pictures made them look. Like in the pictures, they look really like
chintzy,
plasticky. Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of. But when you touched them and stuff, they seemed a lot more solid. So
cool. I'll have to. Were they beating their online price at the show? Did they have a show price?
There was a show price. Okay. Yes, there was a show price. Well, I'm going to hold off somebody.
Because I've been really thinking hard about that, so I can use my Helix this year in some lakes. So I was thinking about using, I know this is digressing, but I was thinking about using my Helix more on lakes that I might potentially fish on a boat at some point, so I can save waypoints. Yep. And then everything else, just the Ice 55.
I'm going to digress with you. Let's digress together.
Where are we going? Where are we going?
Doing it. So we're going to, this made me think of my Helix 7 versus my Ice 35, which is even a wider range of differences there, right?
So that my Ice 55 is pretty, that's a top of the line flasher from Humminbird anyway.
Last year when we fished Last Ice at Dave's, I still struggled to see that thing outside when it was super bright out. Where my Ice 35, I could see it. I still struggled with it cranked all the way up on a super bright sunny day. It was hard to see. I don't know why. I use it in my boat all the time and I don't have a problem seeing it, but it's something about the ice and the sun and the brightness. It's harder to see than my flasher.
I've heard that.
If I'm fishing outside, I almost missed having my 35 over the
So
Helix.
Are you talking me out of hooking up this Helix?
No. If you're in your shack, I would use my Helix all the time, right? I mean, it was just that specific case where we were fishing outside. It was super bright, and even with it cranked all the way up, I felt like I wanted it brighter, and in that specific case.
Okay.
But I barely touched my 35 last year after having the Helix 7. Partially because it has GPS and tells me where to go too. So, all right. The next thing I saw that was interesting, gear-wise, was the Clam X100 Pro Thermal. I know that sounds like the what, right? Like, so basically, this is like top of the line, I guess you would call it, Clam single man ice shack. It was a one man with no poles that extend.
Okay.
But like the biggest, comfiest one they make. It was really nice. It was really expensive. I think it's $800 or something like that.
These have gotten so expensive, it's going to take a lot to move me off the one I'm using now.
$799. Yeah, it's $799. But the one thing I noticed, the tub was bigger and the poles were really wide. But they still flipped over. You weren't extending poles. It was just a flip over kind of thing. But I also did try because I still think I want a bigger one man. I have a one man, but it's almost just too small for me. I probably won't get one this year, but I still always look at them and envy them. Or not envy them, that's the wrong word. It's a bad word. What's the right word I'm thinking of? Want one? I don't know. Would like to upgrade to them.
You long for one.
I long for one. There you go. But they have the Clam Kenai or Kenai. I think it's Kenai Pro. It was a little smaller. It's super comfortable. It's a one man. It's just bigger than my one man, and I think.
What do those weigh?
Probably the shack I should have. They're not too bad. A Kenny. I don't know how do you say that. Kenai. Where are we learning pronunciation?
They didn't teach us these words in Sesame Street.
It doesn't say how much it weighs. 50 pounds.
Oh, that's not bad.
Weighs 50 pounds.
That's nice.
No, yeah. And it's still, again, it's a one man that no extended poles. You just sit in it, you flip it over, super mobile, right? Like, I mean, it's a really fun way to fish if you can get away with it.
Well,
right?
especially when you're, that's one thing I do like about my Clam Nanook or whatever it is that, yes, the poles extend, but when you're looking just for the spot on the spot, and you're going to move 100 yards and you're just dragging by hand, I never collapse the poles. Once it's put up, I just flip it back, and then I flip it forward, and then I flip it back, and then I flip it forward. And, or if, you want to, most of the time, honestly, I flip it back instead of opening the door.
Right.
I just flip it open. And so I really enjoy that feature. And so I don't have a hard time ever moving to a shack where to flip it up, I've got to take a pole out or, I can put a pole in back of me if it's super windy, but 99% of the time, I don't need to do that.
Yeah, and I like that Kini Pro. I think I just looked at the weight of the 100. The 100, that first one I told you that's really fancy, weighs 90 pounds.
See that's heavy. That's
I think
heavy.
So that Kenai Pro or whatever, I think is still the one I want. 50 pounds, flip over, fits your stuff in it. It's got a deep tub. It's super comfy.
Because that will end at 100 pounds when you put all your crap in it. If not more.
It'll get way heavier.
You know, so if you're already at 100 pounds and then you add your stuff, ooh.
Then I need a snow dog.
You do. You do. You do. It would be so much safer.
Anyways, so the last thing that I saw from a gear perspective, this is not something I still would like to try spearfishing again. We did it one time and then we sold off our stuff because we didn't really do very well, it felt like we just cut a hole in the ice and stared at it and then said,
it was, the water was too dark.
Yeah, we
had some implementation issues.
We had the saw, and we had a spear, and we had a decoy that was homemade, and we cut the hole, which was a whole fiasco. And we looked in the water, and you couldn't see the decoy like 2 feet under the water. I don't know how you're going to see a fish to hit it. Yeah, so we kind of deconstructed from there. But anyways, I digress again. From a spearfishing perspective, there was this guy who, Eric Wallace, who Wallace Decoys, made some of the most beautiful decoys you have ever seen in your entire life. That's what he does. He creates decoys. It was interesting when I asked him, I'm like, so where do you fish? He's like, actually, I don't fish anymore. I just make decoys.
So they're so beautiful that you're like, really your job is to defend the decoy.
It's really more like art.
Yeah.
It's more like art, but they were so cool. Like, you couldn't help but stop and talk to him. And he was a super awesome guy. And he talked to me for quite some time about them. And I don't know. They were really pretty. I'll put a link on our site. Full realism. He's won tons of competitions. It was just really cool how awesome they looked.
Cool.
He was a bunch of videos. He was on I don't know if you're from Minnesota. You might know what Minnesota Bound is, but it's a TV show that they do on outdoorsy stuff. And he was on there and some other kind of local TV shows talking about his skills with this. So I thought it was cool.
Very cool.
So that's what I had for gear. Most of it was around that ice fishing expo, and then me digging apart my lures because I can't go ice fishing yet.
I was telling you about this the other day. I'm still pondering, and so I'm going to mention it. So maybe somebody's got someone has done this, and so I want them to send me a picture if they're so inclined. I'm trying to figure out a better setup for my camera. So I've got that camera. It's a Markham camera, and it comes in a little
underwater camera.
The underwater camera. Sorry, underwater camera, fish camera. And so it comes in a brick. It's like a box-shaped brick, and all that stuff's got to get tucked in there just perfect. So it all fits, and you can zip it up tight so it doesn't flop all over. And then when you go to use it, this old Milwaukee makes you really burpy. I'm just like bubbling. Between that and we did Chinese buffet tonight. I'm just like, yeah.
Oh boy, Chinese buffet and then you had beer?
And then old Milwaukee on top of Chinese buffet. Wife's in for a rough night. That's all I can tell you. God bless. So.
What do they call that? The Dutch oven?
We're not going to get into my personal life. And so, so I'm trying to think through how to make something for this camera that incorporates a like a reel or something for the wire and the cable and stuff, and just is easier to deploy.
Sure.
Because that's the trouble with them, is it takes all this time to kind of get it out and hook up the the thing to what do you call that thing to make it turn?
Tripod.
The panner. The
panner.
So if anybody has an idea or has done something, I've got a lot of ideas. I probably don't need ideas. What I need is pictures of something somebody has done successfully.
That actually
works. Yeah, because I've got all sorts of thoughts. I always do. I'm always long on ideas and short on implementation. So if somebody's got something tried and true for that, I'd really appreciate it. Go ahead and send that to me. I'll thank you profusely. And if it works, I'll maybe even have you on the show to tell me about it. How do you like that?
Ooh, that sounds awesome.
I don't know if that's a prize or not, but
yeah, is that penalty or prize? Awesome. All right. Well, I think that's for gear. I think, the rest of the show here, we're going to move on into our interview.
Yeah. So we have Colby coming up next, and he is an ice fishing guide and a fly fishing guide in New Hampshire and Vermont. He has all sorts of really great information on fishing out that direction that's way different, just kind of in how some of the stuff they do and what they call some things. So anyway, you'll hear it here in a second. So it's coming up next. Thanks. All right, tonight we have Colby Sabutis, who's an ice fishing guide and a guide in New Hampshire, on with us. He works for the Woodstock Inn and Resort as a fishing guide. He also is on his local fire department, and he's born and raised in New Hampshire. So he definitely has a different fishing perspective than Jeff and I from the Midwest. We're pretty excited to have Colby on tonight.
Yeah, very excited to be on.
Awesome. So we decided.
I want to share this. Colby has been working and asking for a couple of years to get on the show. And, the first year, like, we can't let him on yet. It's too, that'd be too easy. So we've been making him work at it. And we are certainly excited to finally to have him share his ice fishing expertise with us. So thank you for your persistence, man. We appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Awesome. So I think, we don't always do beverages with guests, but I think today we're going to do a beverage. So I think we'll let Colby start us off here just because he's our guest. So what are you drinking tonight, Colby?
All right. So I have a 9/11 hard cider, and it's a cranberry, and they're out of New York. And the can looks like an evergreen Christmas tree.
Huh.
It's very festive on this almost Thanksgiving.
Absolutely. Not too bad.
Yeah, had a good opening. All right, Jeff. Jeff, tell us your story. Right. You got a story.
It's not that big. I have it's from Great Lakes Brewing Company, which I thought was up in Minnesota, but it appears it might be in Ohio. But it's called Elliot Ness Amber Lager, which is interesting because Elliot Ness is famous for busting Al Capone, right? So I don't know. I guess they named a beer after him. So it said, admittedly, it's a bit of a paradox to name an amber lager for history's most famous agent of prohibition, but it's smooth, malty, and dare we say, arresting paradox.
Oh, good Lord.
That's what I got. But I'm sure you have something less interesting, Jason.
Let me see if there's anything written on this can.
Beer.
This can, it says it very succinctly. It says America's beer. Do you know what that is?
Budweiser?
Old Milwaukee.
Old Milwaukee.
It was worth a shot.
I think that qualifies as an old man beer.
It does. It's got to. It's got. Yeah. I mean, if it doesn't, I don't know what does.
Unlike Bud Light, which is not an old man beer.
I've taken so many hits on the Bud Light situation.
I forgot to open mine, so here you go. All right. Huh, interesting.
All right. So let's see. Let's look at our questions here. So Colby, tell us how you became a fishing guide? Because nobody's ever asked me to be one.
All right. So when COVID originally hit, the Woodstock Inn, which is in Vermont, they had a posting for a fly fishing guide. So I went ahead and I applied for it, stuck my head out there and sent off my application. Have a pretty decent experience in fly fishing. So they went ahead and they extended the offer out to me. The Woodstock Inn doesn't have a ice fishing program or a guide program there for ice fishing. So when my boss found out that's what my other biggest hobby besides fly fishing in general, he said, well, we're going to put you in charge of the ice fishing program. Unfortunately, it lasted only a short season and they didn't continue it this year. So that's kind of the unfortunate part. They're outsourcing it to me. So I'm doing it privately on the side instead of actually physically through them this year. So on top of my regular grooming job that I do for cross country skiing with them, I'm going to do ice fishing as well.
Oh, that's cool though. I mean, you're parlaying that into a private business. That's awesome.
Yeah, something that's been a dream for quite a while and just haven't found anyone to kind of help me or guide me in the right direction. And the Woodstock Inn, with the help from our fly fishing guide, he kind of put me in the right direction with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, then you got to see that structure of how they went about it and move that into your own work. That's cool.
Absolutely. Yeah.
How long is the ice fishing season there? Is it similar to us?
So it depends. We've been out on the ice as early as the week before Christmas, all the way through until sometimes the second week in April. But it really depends on what we have for a freeze on our lakes. Like the big Lake Winnipesaukee in New Hampshire, they'll declare ice in and they declare ice out. So it all depends on safe ice. But the smaller ponds, you can usually get a week before Christmas straight through to the middle of April.
So is there a game fish season that you're playing with there? Like we have walleye closes in Minnesota at a particular, Jeff, the weekend.
It's February 28th, end of February. Yeah.
End of February it closes. And so that shuts a lot of that fishing down. Do you guys have something similar to that out there?
So we have a season for trout. So trout fishing in New Hampshire ends in the 15th of October on a lot of lakes and rivers. So when I fish on my own in New Hampshire and I fish a couple of tournaments and derbies we do in New Hampshire, then we're targeting fish. We're targeting lake trout, rainbow trout, brook trout, and small panfish, stuff like that. So if we're targeting trout, that's January 1st. Okay. And it goes not too long. So it goes till right around April. And then at April 1st, we're allowed to fish for salmon and stuff like that on open bodies of water, not through the ice. So salmon in New Hampshire is an illegal species through the ice. But if you can find open water after April 1st, you're allowed to go for it. In Vermont, we don't really have a particular species that we're targeting. Most of my trips that I do with clients are either going to be crappie, bluegill, or pike.
How did you say that word, crappie? You said it differently. Crappie.
Depends on who you ask in New Hampshire, because everyone says it differently. And then when you go to Vermont, they just say panfish. They don't even distinguish between the species.
Huh. Okay.
It's kind of funny. And then you have the people who are really hardcore that will fish just for that, and they're looking just for the trophy ones instead of the smaller ones. So everyone says things a lot different than what people think elsewhere.
Now, do they call an ice house a bob house? Is that a thing?
Yeah. So we have people call them bob houses. They call them ice shanties, ice shacks. Some people will call them hard houses or hard sided houses. So it's not that different from you guys with some of the things. But we're starting to see a lot more people with the pop-ups. So the Eskimo pop-ups, the clam pop-ups, stuff like that. And they'll go and put them on the lake and leave them there for a full weekend without a problem. So we're starting to see that take off more than the hard-sided, but hard-sided are still the traditional style here. And they have to be completely off the ice at a certain time. And obviously that's within reason, depending upon the ice conditions, stuff like that. So wherever you feel that you can keep it on till ice out, when you're supposed to take it off, keep it. But there are people that take them off way earlier than that because they're just not something that you want to fall through. Fishing game is they're not very happy when they fall through.
No, they don't like that here either.
They get cranky. They get sorts of environmental stuff. Yes. And it's probably not good. I mean, the structure's not bad, but the rest of it's not good.
Well, the structure would be fantastic for a species of fish, absolutely. But no, I don't think they want it floating in a shallow bay or a shallow harbor when boats are constantly going in and out.
Yeah, you don't want to hit that thing with a boat motor.
No.
Colby, what's your favorite thing about being an ice fishing guide? Like, it sounds like this is your second year, and what have you really liked about it?
The biggest thing I take away is being able to take people who have never done it before or never set foot on the ice and bring them out to the ice, and you greet them. I have to be out an hour ahead of time to get everything all set up. I have coffee, hot chocolate, the Bob House, traps, holes drilled, everything.
Wow.
And I meet them on shore. And sometimes it's kind of one of those situations where you have to convince them that the ice is safe enough to walk on. And other times it's not. So I like to be able to do it and to see differences of religions and people's beliefs and skill levels too is another big thing.
Mhm.
So, but I one of the big thing is we had a lot of kids this past year, and teaching them how to do it. They know how to fish regular open water, and then they've never seen some of the fish we have in Vermont. So to get them on those is pretty fun.
So what are some of the unique fish that you guys go after? I mean, in Minnesota we have panfish, right? And we have northerns and walleyes and there's some other things, but trout is, we have trout, but it's pretty small. But what other kind of fish do you guys have?
So we go lake trout, rainbows, brooks, and browns.
Okay.
There is the cusk, or what you guys would call eel pout or burbot.
Oh, okay. Cusk, yeah.
We call it cusk. And lake trout, we call lake trout, even though it's not actually a trout, it's an Arctic char species. Same with brook trout. And a lot of people call them togue, but in New Hampshire, most of the time you'll hear them say lake trout, or Lakers is what we call them for nickname. So those are kind of some of our funner species we go for. White perch, yellow perch, and of course, your basic pumpkin seed,
Sure,
and bluegills for sure.
How big will the perch get out there?
Which species do you like? Were you talking white or yellow?
Ooh,
Sure.
Might not be the same fishes that we catch.
Yes, either one.
So sometimes you can get some white perch in excess of 2 pounds.
Wow. Okay.
Yellow perch you can get right up to the 2 pounds. Sometimes you can get them a little bit bigger, but it's not really common.
And I think a yellow perch is the same thing that we would call a perch in Minnesota, I think.
Yeah, green and yellow stripes, almost like a tiger. Yeah. And then white perch are more similar to almost a striper in a sense. They have the lateral lines. They have the dorsal fin that's just like it.
And so I don't think we have anything like that.
No.
They haven't made it out that far yet.
Yeah.
So you've listened to our show for a while. So as you've listened, what is one thing you're like, wow, that's really different there compared to the way we fish here? Is everything other than some of the different species pretty similar?
A lot of the species are pretty similar. One of the big things that I take away from what you guys talk about and the people and your adventures and everything like that are the seasons and the changing of the seasons, where you have cutoffs throughout the winter time. And also the other thing that's really interesting to hear is people have ice houses, like Yetis or ice castles or stuff like that. We don't really see those out here. And if we started seeing them, they'd be pretty cool. But a lot of times I think people are more geared toward they build their own Bob house, and it's something that they've built and they enjoy doing, instead of this big, massive camper you're hauling out on the ice and you lower down. But I would love to actually see an ice castle or a Yeti out here. It'd be pretty cool.
Jeff, it sounds like we need to hook up the Yukon and head east.
Yeah.
I tell you what, I will drive if you pay for gas.
Yeah. It gets about 8 miles a gallon or so when you pull that beast. Yeah.
Depends on. Yeah, probably.
No, it is a sight to be seen. Like Jason's been out there out in Mille Lacs which is a pretty big lake here in Minnesota, and there's just thousands and thousands of those things out there. Like at night, you just look across the lake. I mean, you can't see across the lake, but you look as far as you can see, and it's just ice houses everywhere. So it's crazy.
Yeah, we have a spot like that on Lake Winnipesaukee in Meredith, where my parents live, and that's where I've grown up and fished. And Meredith Bay is very small, but you're pretty sure to find anywhere between maybe 50 to 150, 200 Bob houses out there.
Sure.
And they're not just like the four sides and a door. Some of them have a oil tank outside with a fireplace inside with a deck. Some of them
Nice.
They get pretty crazy. Some of them are just, like I said, your basic pop-up, or some people go crazy and build like an actual castle with the flags and the
that's awesome
and everything. Yeah, it's kind of cool.
So it is interesting in that, like the wheelhouse craze hasn't gotten there yet.
Yeah.
Jeff, maybe we need to move to New Hampshire and open up a Yeti
I know.
dealership or something.
Yeah. Well, they can't make them fast enough here. So,
so you said, go ahead.
I'm sure up in like Sebago or Moosehead and stuff like that in Maine, I'm pretty sure they've probably gotten into them up there.
Yep.
But I don't know. I've never seen one in New Hampshire yet.
Wow.
And the ice you get a couple feet of ice or 18 inches of ice out there.
Yeah, we've had 24. I think 2 years ago we were up to 36 inches almost.
Oh, yeah. It's plenty of ice.
Wow.
Yeah, they were. So Lake Winnipesaukee goes from Meredith to Alton Bay. It's the largest lake in New Hampshire. It's 26.5 miles to go all the way around it.
Wow.
They used to, a long time ago, before I was even born, they used to drive from Meredith to Alton Bay on the ice, straight across the Broads. And they haven't been able to for the past 6 or 7 years. And then 2 years ago, there were reports of ice being thick enough over the Broads to do so. So the Broads are 300 plus feet deep in some areas. So for that to freeze solid enough for a car is pretty substantial.
Yeah. Wow. So
Jason, there's so many trips we could take if we just didn't have to work.
The thing, that pesky work thing, and with Ole, our buddy Ole, who we've talked about, he loves trout. Like, that's his deal. So we could probably do, we maybe need to get a hard water invitational and head out east to fish trout.
That'd be awesome.
I think it's time. I think you're right.
We do need a few more than 4 days, though, I think, because we'll have to, we'll need more time.
Maybe we just take a guide and fly there.
Yeah. Yeah. Just, write the check, right?
Right. Well, we'll talk to Colby. He can hook us up.
So Colby, you mentioned that your folks grew up fishing. So how old were you when you first started ice fishing? Talk to us about that.
Ice fishing was probably around 7 or 8 years old.
Cool.
It actually might even be a little bit older than that. I still have my very first ice fishing traps that my dad bought for me. We used to have a little shop right downtown in Meredith that I'd walk into, and the owner got to know me ever since I was little. So when I walk in, he's pretty happy to see me all the time. And they used to sell tip-ups that were half the size of like your regular Heritage Laker tip-up for being put in a backpack. And I still use them today almost all the time.
You just used a term that we don't use. You said ice fishing traps.
Yeah, traps, tip-ups.
Okay.
It all kind of depends on which style we're talking about. But if I'm not jigging, then I'm using a trap.
So it's like a tip up, but you said they're kind of half size. So when I think of a traditional tip up, I would describe like a beaver dam tip up, which is basically like a board, right? With a reel in the middle that goes into the water, and then a flag that, when the reel spins, the flag goes up. Is that kind of the same thing, or are your guys constructed differently?
No. So I use those as well. I have a custom made one from a company in Sabutis, Maine. My parents bought me one. But we use ones that are straight stick up and down, and then they have a crisscross, like an X style, and the reel is down below. So it's a HT Enterprises makes them. They're called Heritage Laker traps. We use those. We'll use the boards like the Beaver Dam. The other thing that we use is Fraybill or Clam has the round ones that sit on top of your hole so your snow doesn't blow. We use those too. So when I'm not jigging, it's usually with that, but I'm allowed anywhere between 2 to 6 lines per person. Depending on the lake I go. So I'll usually have 2 jig holes open and 4 traps out or tip ups out, depending upon where I am.
Yeah, we get like a 2 max, right?
That's that keeps you busy though. If you're setting and running 4 tip ups and jigging a couple of lines, or even running 6 tip ups, you'd be drilling a lot of holes. So what's your auger setup? What are you using for that?
So I started out with a hand auger, one of the Striker lasers, the old crank.
Bless you.
The Mora, I think the Mora it was. Blue, sit there and crank it down. And then about 7 or 8 years ago, I got a Jiffy auger. I bought it secondhand. The auger now I think is right around 34 years old from when it was actually manufactured. It didn't run at all. So I partnered up with Eskimo Ice Fishing, and they actually supplied me with a couple hub shelters. They supply with me with my full uniform, bibs, jacket, everything underneath. And then I ended up buying an auger through them. So I have a new gas powered auger from them.
Okay.
We use, and we'll burn, I don't know, probably half a tank of gas a day, which isn't a ton of holes because we'll put our fish finders down to see what's going on. But yeah, we usually use just that auger there.
Cool.
I haven't gone to battery yet. It's something I want to do, but it's too expensive, so I haven't gone over.
Yeah. I have a battery one, but back to the wheelhouse thing is, I didn't want to run a gas auger in my A-Shack, so I got an electric one.
You can't afford to lose any brain cells as it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can see where that would be an issue with the gas inside.
So cool. Well, that's pretty awesome that you could team up with them and get some gear and try their stuff out. So what's your favorite fish? I know we talked about, a bunch of different ones. What's the one that like gets you up in the morning and gets you out there when it's really cold outside?
So in New Hampshire, it's anything. It doesn't matter what specific species I'm going for. I love lake trout and I love rainbow trout just because the fight hands down is phenomenal. Mm-hmm. When they see the light coming through the hole, they'll dive.
Mm-hmm.
One of the really cool things about lake trout, when we get them, we're fishing them. Some people fish them anywhere between 20 to 100 feet deep. So if we're fishing at 40, as soon as we pull them up, they burp. So they're one of the only fish out there that can actually burp the air out of their bladder, so that they don't always have that issue with being brought from a really deep depth and have that bladder being kind of dysfunctional. When I take my clients out in Vermont and I'm actually working, I like to go for pike. I've never caught pike before in my life. And last year, my first one that I caught through the ice was 32 inches.
Wow.
So
was that on a trap, as you say, or was that on a jigging rod?
Nope. So that was on my iFish Pro. I partnered up with iFish Pro to get a bunch of traps in for the guide service and to get some stuff in from them. So we set one up with a double predator rig and we got into some pretty big pike out there.
Wow.
That's solid.
So the iFish Pro, I've seen a little bit of these and I've seen them. I haven't had one, but are those the ones where you use a rod with it too?
So a couple, I think it was not, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, you guys did an episode where somebody talked about bobber stops.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I wrote to you about bobber stops.
Yep.
So bobber stops we have to use with our jig poles in order to use the iFish Pros, because you have to put the latch mechanism underneath the bobber stop so that when the fish pulls your line, it actually pulls the mechanism out to set your flag off.
Gotcha. And so then you have your rod sitting next to it and the iFish Pro, and your line goes through the hole with that bobber stop. And when the fish takes it, the bobber stop kind of makes the flag go up.
Yes. Yep.
And then you pick the rod up, or you run to the hole frantically, like, right. We used to run faster when we were younger. Now we maybe trot, or we used to tackle each other on the way to but we don't do that anymore. But yeah. So, yeah, I know. But then you can reel it in on your like kind of spinning rig, right? Is that usually what you use? Yep.
So as soon as the flag goes up, you'll hear somebody yell flag, and then it's a free for all. Whoever gets there first gets it, and we'll take the rod out of the holder and we remove the trap to get it out of the way of the hole. And then it's just like fighting a regular fish with a rod and reel. You have that drag, which is a huge help compared to winding it in.
Wind it in. Does that too? Is that a hook setter too, or is it just a trip device? Because I know they have some that are like jaw jackers or something like they call them usually.
Yeah, no, it's just a flag device. So basically, you'll set it and you'll leave your bail open.
Okay,
and that's what allows the fish to grab it and run, and then it goes off or close your bail.
Yep,
hook yourself.
So you set the hook when you get it to the rod. Cool.
Oh yeah.
So for trout, what's your bait? How are you rigging the trap, or if you're jigging, what are you using? What's your go-to?
So if I'm jigging, I'm using Clam's leech flutter spoons, or I'm using that new pinhead jointed minnow, or the
that's a good one.
the Taki minnow. And if I'm using a trap, I'm doing a medium shiner, or I'm using smelt, rainbow smelt.
And frozen smelt, I'm assuming then.
Nope, straight live.
Live.
Oh, yeah.
Can we even get that in our area, Jeff?
I don't know if we have live smelt. I think it all comes from the freezer.
I think it comes, yeah.
Well, so one of the things, so smelt is extremely hard to keep alive when you get it alive. So you can try to keep it for 2 days, but usually they're dead after that 1 day. So you try to use them, but when you hook them, we hook them in the back, right? Either behind or in front of the dorsal fin. And if you go too low, you end up killing them anyways, because you go through the spine. So I like to go more of the shiners because they're a little bit hardier and there's more meat in the back that I can actually hook through instead of killing all my bait within the first time.
See, we always joke that shiners have no will to live. They just seem to give up constantly. The ones we get.
The fatheads and crappie minnows will live forever. But yeah, you get shiners or suckers and you get a day and
they have no willpower.
We do fish suckers for cusk, okay. Or in Vermont, I fish suckers for pike.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm fishing small suckers. I'm not fishing anything too big. So
yeah, I know you go to the bait shop sometimes and you're like, whoa, keep that. That's as big as the things I'm catching. Yeah.
Fillet it out in the event of emergency.
Yeah.
Cool.
So if someone was just going to start fishing for trout, what would you say they should? I know you said about the leech flutter spoon, but what would the rod look like? What kind of reel would you recommend? Line, that kind of stuff. What do you suggest?
Oh, geez.
I didn't put that on the list of questions. I'm putting you on the spot.
Put everything in the history of ice fishing. Go. I'm just kidding. Go.
So I unlike the short rod show guys, there's not a lot of schoolie rods used out here. There are some people that are old school. They like to use the schoolie rods. But our rods are typically 28 to 36 inches.
Okay.
If I'm going for lake trout, I'm using a heavy rod or a medium heavy. I have a couple custom rods built from Limit Creek Outfitters. Did a bunch of custom rods and had those built. I'm working with a guy in, I believe it's Portsmouth, New Hampshire right now, Driftwood Fishing Company. He does fly rods, all custom built. We're working on a line of ice fishing rods right now. So we're kind of playing around with what's that kind of golden length, golden power. But for trout, medium to medium heavy is perfect. 28 is like the smaller side. I know some people go a lot smaller than that. I would say my longest rod is 42 inches, 40 or 42 inches long. But that's a straight heavy rod. So that's going to be my Laker rod. My reel is going to be, oh, geez. I don't even remember what reel I have on them. Fluger for sure. I'm just not sure which one. And I have a Shimano on one of them as well.
Okay.
So, but for pound test and for line, you have to be very careful with it. They are shy in the wintertime, but they're also very shy with pressure and resistance too. So if I'm doing that, I'm right around 6 pound for Lakers, which is kind of really all right. But with the teeth on it, you break them off a lot because you're using light lines. So I'll do like a good size braided leader or braided line, and then I'll do an 8 pound fluorocarbon leader for Lakers, but my rainbow is all 6 pound.
So then you're doing a leader on your traps.
Yeah, all my traps have leaders, and they are all 4.5 pound leaders right now.
Wow.
Yep. So my traps that I use personally are all 4. My traps I use for guiding are all 8 pound. So I changed that just because clients who have never ice fished before, it's kind of hard to teach them and not have them understand. You got to let the fish run when he wants to run.
It's hard for anybody to understand. You're like, I want to get that thing.
Horse it in there.
They get super excited when you say, "Oh, it's a pike." They're like, "Oh my goodness, I don't know what it is. Let me look at it." For lures, we're using the leech flutter spoon. We're using the dingle drop, the epoxy drop. and my all-time favorite, Swedish pimples.
Swedish pimples, yeah.
Swedish pimples with a bare hook, because you cannot have a treble hook baited in New Hampshire.
Really? Okay.
Yep. So if you want to bait a treble hook, you have to cut 2 hooks off and have one with bait on it. So it's not actually considered a treble hook anymore because you don't have 3 hooks.
Sure.
But you have to have only 1 hook with bait on it in New Hampshire. You cannot bait a treble.
Well, that's weird. Don't they have just some weird rules generally, like for fishing? It's like, who gives a rip?
Oh, we've got them all here because
I
Jason,
know.
we have the you can't put a treble hook. I think you have to have a spoon, right? That's why like sometimes check your regs. Don't trust me on this one, but like there are certain times where you have to have some type of lure or something on there with your treble hook, right? Otherwise you can't do it.
Yeah,
right?
otherwise you can only do 1 treble hook. You can't do 2 treble hooks.
But if you put the lure, the little like blade on there that's like the side, like a tiniest blade you can find, then
that makes it okay.
Yes. Yeah. No.
Well, the other thing too, I don't know, do you guys allow lead when you're where you are fishing?
They do.
Yes.
We do not allow lead at all in New Hampshire. It's a lead free.
We would be leaving half of our tackle at home, which is okay.
I got enough to share. We're good.
Yeah.
So you're using the tungsten alloys or?
Yep. Tungsten, steel, some old lures I have are tin.
Yeah.
We're going way, way, way back. But yeah, usually it's that tungsten or steel.
They've promoted, I know in Minnesota, and certainly we want to help the environment. They've promoted it quite a bit to not use lead, but it's certainly pretty, I mean, I would say 80% of the lures, except for tungsten jigs, are going to be lead in Minnesota or Iowa.
And I think I think you guys actually had a question that says how many fish were caught on lead jigs at one point in time, and the answer that someone said was all of them, because that was true. And now that with lead poisoning in lakes with loons and other waterfowl, it's become an issue, so they're outlawed it completely in New Hampshire. We do allow lead sinkers for cusk because they're a certain size, so we have certain rules for cusk traps and stuff like that.
They're not there yet. There's so many cottage industries and just little guys making jigs and all that stuff that they're hand making and hand molding. And I don't know. I'm sure at some point it's going to get there.
It will.
It's going to happen.
Oh, absolutely. Just to be able to get the tungsten though is so hard to get it from suppliers. And then when you finally get it, you have to sell it for a high premium because it's so expensive.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, your tungsten jig, which could be equivalent to like a 1/4 ounce lead, is probably going to be $14 or $15 as the lead would be $5.
Wow.
So the price difference for tungsten is significantly different.
Think about Northland rattle spoons that we buy. I just found out I had 8 of them. Imagine if they're all tungsten. $15 versus like $5.
Probably.
Anything else we missed that you wanted to talk about?
One of the things that I've kind of looked at and I like to do, we fish tournaments out here. So we fish the Winnipesaukee Ice Fishing Derby, and we do it fairly. I've been doing it ever since I started ice fishing, and I'm 34 now. So you figure if I started at 8, I've been doing it every year. And it is absolutely crazy to actually fish a tournament like that, where it's every lake in the state of New Hampshire you're allowed to fish on. That is not a trout specific or a trout designated body of water. And some of the fish you guys would have to come out and see. Some of the fish are easily big enough to swallow our feet that they're pulling in. Oh, there's Lakers that they're pulling in that can swallow a size 11 foot.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, it's pretty crazy. And the stakes, pretty sure the stakes this year are right around $50,000. I might be off a number or two. But that's what the stakes are pretty high for the winner. And that's really nice because a couple years ago, a 13-year-old kid won or a 12-year-old kid won on a pickerel. So
cool.
That's college fun for him right there.
So awesome. That happens over the course of the day, or is it a couple of days? Or
it's the 13th and 14th of February this year, I believe. It's the weekend after Super Bowl.
Oh.
So whatever weekend that is. I think it's the 13th and 14th. So everyone's going to be out there fishing on Valentine's Day, and hopefully their wives or girlfriends are not going to be mad.
Yeah, somebody that creates conflict.
Well, it depends. If they like to go fishing with you, then you're perfectly fine. And if that's the case, then you better hope that they're not as good or that they're better than you, so that you can win the trophy prize somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, at that point, I don't care who wins, as long as someone in the family does.
That's right.
That's awesome.
Cool.
So, have you ever won?
I have not won yet.
Okay. I like the confidence.
We were on the board 5 years ago with a perch, and it got kicked off. And then a buddy of mine went out the next day and caught a perch and won $50 off of it.
Hey.
But I didn't go out the next day, so I didn't win any money because I didn't have a fish to submit.
So is it each species has the biggest of each species, or is it overall, or what is it?
Yep. So it's the top 4 or 5 of 6 different species of fish. So you have cusk, rainbow, lake trout, pickerel, crappie, yellow perch, and white perch. So you have 7 species, and you have, it's either 4, like I said, 4 or 5 places, and it's the heaviest one of each category over the course of the 2 days. We'll put in a hat, and they'll draw out of the hat. Oh. But if you win, if you're the biggest rainbow on Saturday and you stay on the board all day long, then you win a prize.
Okay.
Cool.
If you're second place, so the money goes all the way down to $50 is the minimum.
Oh, I remember something I was going to. What are you using for electronics?
So right now I have a Garmin Striker, which is what I started out with 4.5, 5 years ago. I started with that.
Okay.
It's got a regular boat transducer, so I have that kind of rigged up on the little foam noodle they give you for a float. I have it zip tied so it sits the right way.
Sounds like some good engineering. That sounds good.
I was going to use duct tape, but duct tape doesn't work well in the freezing cold water.
No.
So, and then I bought a Lowrance Hook 4.
Okay.
So it's a horizontal instead of a vertical. And I find that the Lowrance has a better flasher mode on it than the Garmin does. But the Garmin has actually been better for me. I like my Garmin a little bit better. It holds up better to the elements in the winter, and I have waypoints stored on it and everything. There's no GPS in it, but if I'm walking out on a lake, I can go right back to that exact setup I walked out on and go right to the spot.
Very cool.
And then we use Navionics.
Is it pretty accurate for your lakes out there?
Pretty much. Yeah, Navionics. I mean, if I go out in my boat or my parents' boat and I go out there and I can actually put a set of contours over Navionics for what I'm seeing, and I can go that way as well. So I can actually help improve that. They do allow you to do that. And then I mark my waypoints, and they're all the exact same in the winter.
Cool.
That's the most accurate we have, unless we're spending a ton of money getting the higher end, fish finders.
Yeah, there's a diminishing point of returns on some of the options.
Oh, absolutely.
Of course, I always encourage Jeff to buy them so I can look at them. But
I was just watching live scope trout. Oh boy.
You guys have live scope yet, or has that not been?
No, that's beyond our budget.
The Minister of Finance and War has not approved that particular purchase yet, but I'll keep asking.
I've seen it on YouTube.
Yeah, it's a friend of mine. I fished a bass tournament this summer, and he had it in his boat, and it is insane. Yeah, it is really cool.
I just, from looking at the live scope, it is a lot of screwing around too, though. So that's what I keep telling myself. Yeah, that it seems like a lot of work.
Well, it's a lot to carry with you and a lot to have for a setup on the ice. On the boat, you just mount it to your trolling motor on the front, and you don't have to worry about it. If you're with ice, you have to carry that pole to put it down, and the extra massive battery you have to run it. And I mean, you're carrying way more than what the three of us would go out there on the ice with, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I've always cautioned Jeff, though, about overextending himself on his summer fishing expenditures. So
yeah, but they can work for you in favor in wintertime too.
That's true. It's a good point. It's a good point. Although his trolling motor doesn't work for crap in the winter. So,
but that is we're going off ice fishing here, but that trolling motor is worth its weight in gold. Oh, it's so good.
Jeff, should we ask him a little bit about the fly fishing, long as we've got him here?
Yeah, let's do that, because I know a little bit more than I do. I've more fly fished with you, Jay, more than anybody else that one weekend.
Yeah, well, I tried once to actually fly fish, and I kept hitting myself on the back of the head. I'm assuming that's not how it works. I don't think I have the coordination. So how long you been fly fishing?
I've been fly fishing for, when I was 21, I started. A friend of mine, we bought a rod on a whim to add another fishing rod to our plethora of things that we have going on. And we figured it's the same way you would cast a regular rod. And, well, no, it's definitely not.
No, I found that out.
So I tried it, didn't work. So I broke it down, put it in the closet, left it there. I went on a camping trip to Pittsburgh shortly after my 21st birthday. And a friend of mine said, well, we're going to go up and you can only fly fish and we're not going to bring a lot of food. And this is your situation. And here you go. If you catch a fish, great. You have dinner. If you don't, that's it.
I like it.
So the first day I didn't catch anything. The second day we finally caught a good amount for dinner. So I learned over the course of, say, 16, 17 hours, he brought me right up to speed. And then I've just gone with it. I went to Orvis about 11 years ago and did the fly fishing school there and was the advanced fly fishing school because they found out that I already know how to fly fish. So I was put in I was given more technical things to work on and more technical things to look at. And my dad kind of was still in the beginner group. So it was all kind of the same thing. It's just we worked on different techniques. And ever since that specific day on that trip that my dad and I took, I stuck with fly fishing and stayed with it, and been 2 years as a guide now for Orvis Endorsed Lodge, the Woodstock Inn. So it's been a dream come true for sure.
That's cool. That's cool. I always, I really appreciate you sharing that with us. It's neat to see people that have been able to take a passion and make a living out of it. So that's awesome.
I wouldn't say quite a living because I do have to supplement it with rooming the trails and trail work and stuff like that.
Sure.
For skiing and mountain biking and hiking. But most of the trips we did, I did just shy of 100 fly fishing trips this year. We did just under 400. I think the numbers were. I didn't get the final numbers for the year, but I think it was right around just under 400 trips for the fly fishing season, which just ended the end of October.
Wow.
Cool.
But you'll catch me on the rivers this winter. There's 2 rivers in Vermont that we fish year round, and you'll catch me on one of those in January or February for sure.
So I'm assuming for waders, then you don't have like the $50 frog tog ones.
No, Orvis Pros.
Yeah.
Orvis Pros. And then I wear thermal underwear with a pair of pants over it, and then the waders on top of that, with like double wool socks for comfort in your feet because it gets kind of cold fast.
Oh man, I met sitting in that cold water.
I think ice fishing's cold. Go stand in the water and see how it is, right?
Well, we've talked about that. So like I've been up in Canada one year. We were up there and we were supposed to ice fish, but it got warm. So we're in a boat. But a boat at 35 degrees is cold.
Oh,
like super cold compared to like ice fishing at 35 degrees is like nice.
Oh, yeah, it's comfortable. I'm in a sweatshirt and jeans usually.
Yeah, but you go the other way and you put yourself in a boat at that temperature and you're just cold as heck. So
absolutely.
It's just weird. Well, did you come with a good ice fishing story for us tonight? Do you have a favorite story to tell that you tell your clients or your kids or whoever?
So we were, all right. So about 3 years ago, no, actually, sorry, I take that back. 5 years ago, a friend of mine that I was in CrossFit with had said to me, let's go fish for Lakers. And it was bright early in the morning. We went to this ledge that we had seen people fish before. And you can clearly tell where they put their bob houses because the ice is melted in that perfectly square pattern with the big mounds of snow all the way around it. So we went and tapped their holes open. Right off in the morning, the sun wasn't even risen over the mountain yet. I had my tip up out and I had a hole that I was jigging and I felt a little bit of a thump on it. So I thought I caught the bottom and I ripped on the hook to try to break it free. And it was probably my biggest Laker year to date so far, at weighing just shy of 6 pounds.
Wow.
So we ended up going back and forth all day. He caught one, I'd catch one. He caught the flag finally went off at sunrise. So we pulled a Laker in on that. We ended up getting right around 55 Lakers in 4.5 hours.
Holy crap.
And they all were a minimum of 4 pounds.
Wow.
So we ended up taking 2 home each because you're allowed 2. And what I did with mine, and this is what I ended up taking away from it, and this is the biggest thing that I like to talk about, is we had a ice fishing competition show called Ice Holes, sponsored by National Geographic. Took place on Lake Winnipesaukee and a couple other bodies of water. One of the guys cooked lake trout. So I talked to him shortly after that show was done and over with, and he actually stuffs his lake trout. And I thought that's a great way to do it because they taste horrible if you don't add flavor to them.
Okay.
So I stuffed mine with crab meat and breadcrumbs and sewed it back together and drizzled it with butter and threw it on the grill.
Mm-hmm.
And it was phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
It was just mouth-watering excitement. It was perfect.
That's awesome.
Every time we go back to that spot, we can't even get the location we have marked. There's always a Bob House sitting right there because people know exactly what's going on.
It's like the spot on the spot. Like you have to be right there.
Yeah, it's usually right there or maybe 3 or 4 feet to either side of it. It's kind of like a little valley. But all the bait gets pushed up to a wall where they're right off. So that's what they're all sitting there for. Wow. But that's the most fish I've ever caught in one day, and it was the most exciting day. So
what time of day did you start fishing?
We started at 7:30 in the morning.
Okay.
Yeah, that's when we put our first, because that was right at sunrise. So that's when we started and we were actually able to see. But usually my traps or my holes are all drilled and ready to go by 5:30.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It gets crazy.
Well, I loved how he said over the mountain as the sun came over the mountain. You know, like we don't have that here. I mean, we have some big hills, but
I'll send you guys a picture of it because it's a really awesome photo to look at how it looks.
Well, Colby, we really, really appreciate you coming on the show. It's been awesome talking to you and getting to know you better and hearing about your fishing out there in New Hampshire and Vermont. I think we're going to figure out how to get out there.
Absolutely.
You definitely should. It would be awesome to have you guys out and show you around.
All right. Well, thank you, Colby, again for being on the show. And Jeff, I think that's all we got for tonight. All right. Tight lines.
Cheers.
5. You've been listening to the Hard Water Fishing Show with Jeff and Jason.
Say goodbye.
One of the most unique podcasts on the planet, where we talk about tactics, gear, and ice fishing legends. We'll be back soon.
Bye-bye.
Till then, signing off.
Bye-bye.